The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today I am welcoming back Congressman Earl Blumenauer of Oregon, who is also the co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus and has had over 51 years of cannabis advocacy. Congressman, welcome. Thank you so much for coming back to the show. It's always a joy to talk with you.
Thank you, Sara. I really enjoy our conversation. I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, I'm glad. So have I. And we have a lot to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And I know, you have done so much work. You created the Congressional Cannabis Caucus. You were one of the first people in government to start having the conversations about cannabis legalization. And can we have a little conversation about the history and the trajectory?
Sure. I'd be pleased to share that. I started as a child legislator when I was in my early 20s, and it was a time of reform and activity in Oregon. And one of the areas for reform was starting to change our perceptions about how we dealt with addiction and substance abuse. I mean, that was back in the day where we used to throw people in jail who were chronic late-stage alcoholics. And Oregon, as part of the reform dealing with how we dealt with alcohol and cannabis, made a decision that we were going to decriminalize, not legalize, but we were going to decriminalize it. And it was overwhelmingly popular. We passed it in the Oregon legislature in June of 1973, the first state in the union. And we've been working on that ever since. When we started, public support, when you just ask people, you support legalizing cannabis. Well, if you ask the legalized, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. You had to say marijuana. And in those early days, it was in 1969, 12% of the public supported it. But what we found out in the Oregon legislature, as we rolled up our sleeves and got involved, the more people understood the issue, support grew. We had some of the most amazing presentations in the Oregon legislature in 73. There was one I will never forget. A conservative Eastern Oregon pig farmer named Stafford Hansel was the main carrier of the bill. And his presentation was still one of the most powerful I've ever seen. He stood up there and he said, "This is a pack of cigarettes. It's perfectly legal for somebody even 16, and it kills 400,000 people a year." He took out a bottle of Jack Daniels. He didn't drink, put it on his desk, and said, "This is perfectly legal for people who are 21, and it kills thousands of people every year." And then he held up a baggie and said, "This is a marijuana cigarette. It's not going to kill anybody, but it's illegal, and in some cases you can be jailed." And it was fascinating that sort of bipartisan support, common sense, helped build this momentum. It's gone, frankly, slower than I thought, Sara. I thought we'd make more progress. For a long time, Oregon was just the signal state that did it. You in California helped break the dam with medical cannabis being ahead of the curve and that big market. And then the second phase, if I would say that, dealt with the expanded legalization. Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska in 2012 and 2014, kind of broke the dam. And ever since then, it's been steady progress. 24 states, as you know better than anybody. And when you talk about medical cannabis, that's like the 4th of July. It's overwhelmingly supported. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I love thinking about how far we've come We've still got a long ways to go, but we've reached the point today where a majority of Republicans, Democrats, and independents all support full legalization. And I think the progress is accelerating.
Yeah, I agree. I just recently had Rick Steves on the show.
Oh, how
Yeah.
is he doing? Is he okay?
Yeah, he's doing great. And we had an amazing conversation about his views on legalization. And he was saying, I'm not pro pot, I'm pro civil liberties.
Yes.
But I also really enjoyed his thoughts on pragmatic harm reduction. And I
Yes.
think, when we look at cannabis, it's about cannabis, but it isn't. It's so much more than that. It's about critical thought and the way our government looks at people and how we, instead of putting people in jail, how do we turn it around so that we either help them with their relationships with substances, or if somebody is working in the illicit market, how do we lower the barrier of entry so that they can have, a tax paying company?
Well, and enforce the laws that we have in terms of the integrity of the market. Yeah, the reason things are so dysfunctional is that government is dysfunctional. We've seen the federal government, despite, I was involved at the beginning where we started decriminalization, but the federal government at that same time was involved on the failed, unfair, misguided war on drugs. It destroyed millions of lives, wasted resources. It was unfair, inequitable. And we still have a lot of those vestiges of the failed war on drugs that are out there. And that's one of the problems we've got with our efforts at legalization, is because this is so deeply ingrained that it's been slow to take effect. And it gives us these dysfunctional markets. We have cheaters and we have cartels and thugs. And until the federal government gets its act together, it's not going to work very well.
No, it's not. And there are people that are simultaneously elated, but also worried about the rescheduling.
Yes.
What are your
Yes.
thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, if I had my way, we would deschedule, because, as you know, if we were doing it over again, cannabis would not be a Scheduled I controlled substance. Tobacco would be, because it's highly addictive and it kills people. But we've settled on an approach, the best we could get from the Biden administration, and I appreciate the fact that we're looking at rescheduling to Schedule III. This is very significant because when you classify cannabis as a Schedule III drug, you no longer have the problem we know of as 280E, where you can't deduct your business expenses. So when we reschedule, not only does that help us on some research and whatnot, but it instantly will take many of these corner dispensaries and make them profitable almost overnight. So it's a huge step forward. I also think that it's a signal, finally, that the federal government is getting its act together. And I think we might get some accelerated progress dealing with the banking issue. It's outrageous that we have people in your state and mine who are paying their state taxes with duffel bags full of $20 bills.
Yeah,
it's
right.
unsafe, it's expensive, allowing them access to banking services, which, as you know better than anybody, we've passed that in the House of Representatives 7 times. 7 times. And we see some progress in the Senate with Senator Sherrod Brown, Cory Booker, Chuck Schumer. They're ready to go. I hope it gets on the floor, because if it's on the floor, I think it will pass 2-1 in the Senate.
I hope it does, because it's not only affecting plant touching businesses, but I know for myself and other journalists and people who do things that do not have anything to do with the sale of cannabis, Stripe has shut down my account so that my
Yes.
clients can't pay me.
Isn't it outrageous?
It's crazy. It's really crazy. But going back to the rescheduling,
Sure.
another fear that people have, I mean, even though we have dispensaries now dispensing what are considered Schedule 1 drugs, is that the rescheduling may have an impact on dispensaries being able to operate, and that we would be looking at a whole new system, that it would be more pharmacy based and it would put people out of business. Do you see that there's any teeth in that?
We don't have to accept that. I mean, the fact is that the legislation we passed in the House, the MORE Act, I have legislation, obviously a chief sponsor of that, which was supported by Senator Kamala Harris. And of course, Tim Walz signed full legalization in Minnesota recently. No, we don't have to get caught up in hopeless bureaucratic pharmacological contests. We have legislation that would enable us to streamline it. There is consensus about being able to treat cannabis like alcohol in terms of tax, in terms of regulation. People ought to know what they're buying. That doesn't require a huge bureaucracy and dueling contests. We know how to do this. So being able to move forward with a reasonable regulatory system, being able to give them access to banking services, being able to have some product standards. This is not rocket science. And we have models on a state and local level that could be adapted. There's enough expertise, there's enough energy that we ought to be able to put this together, I think, in a matter of months.
Yeah, it just depends on how slow the wheels of government roll.
Well, but we ought to be serious about this, and we ought to hold people accountable. And we ought to make sure that people make this a political issue. I mean, my Lord, even Donald Trump, who's been stumbling around, couldn't figure out what his position was for 8 years. He's come out in favor of the ballot measure in Florida. I mean, he equivocates, but he knows that this is the wave of the future. And if you can get even Donald Trump to finally take a sort of a position, and the fact that a majority of Republicans, Democrats, and independents support this, we ought to be able to move it relatively quickly. The stakes are high. The industry has been, I think, quite responsible, and the advocates have been amazing. We've got the pieces, we can put them in place, and that's something I want to spend some of my time when I leave Congress. I want to work on to make sure that it happens.
Elevate your brand with iSpire, the global leader in vape technology with over 1,000 patents worldwide. Our innovative iSpire 1 simplifies your process with self-sealing hardware and automated filling. No capping, no hassle. For brands ready to go to market, our iSpire signature devices offer premium, customizable solutions. And as proud members of NCAA, NORML, the Origins Council, and the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, iSpire is committed to advocacy and social justice. Learn more today at getispire.com.
It's so incredibly important, and I wonder, we know that a majority of our fellow citizens support cannabis legalization, but do you think that the Congress people and the senators have an outdated view of who the average cannabis user is? Because one of the things that I try to do with the podcast is to activate the public in being more civically engaged, and to talk to their representatives who depend on their votes for their positions. I pay taxes, I contribute to society, I use cannabis, and I vote. Do you think that it makes a difference for people to come out and talk to their elected officials and let them know that, they are being affected by this?
It does. And frankly, the political support has been building. But I make the point to the politicians, particularly the Biden administration, that there is no downside to them embracing a robust decriminalization, move on the legalization. I point out to anybody I can talk to in the Biden administration that cannabis was why Joe Biden won Arizona in 2012. If it weren't for that overwhelming vote to legalize in Arizona, they wouldn't have had that massive turnout that provided a 30,000 vote margin for the presidential race in Arizona. If it weren't for cannabis, Biden wouldn't have won Arizona. Or an example that I use with my friends in the Senate, John Fetterman has been a longtime champion of legalized cannabis. We worked for him before he was in the Senate, when he was back for lieutenant governor. He was an advocate. His support for cannabis was the difference in his election to the U.S. Senate. If it weren't for cannabis, Democrats wouldn't have controlled the U.S. Senate. Chuck Schumer wouldn't be majority leader. There is no downside for politicians supporting rational cannabis policy. And we see example after example where it's made the difference at the ballot box.
You've worked with the vice president. If we have a Harris administration, I know, if you were to look into your crystal ball, and I know there are no definites, but what do you think you would see with a Harris administration around all of this?
Well, this ticket is the most sympathetic we've ever had for cannabis. Kamala Harris co-sponsored our MORE Act, the most comprehensive piece of cannabis reform ever introduced, which passed the House, and Kamala supported it and co-sponsored it in the Senate. And I mentioned Tim signed legalization in Minnesota. I think this administration would send clear signals to all of the U.S. attorneys to get with the program. I think it would accelerate these challenges in terms of being able to have bank accounts, being able to have product standards. These are things that where there needs to be some reform and adjustment. I mean, you and I know that the cannabis that is sold today is not the same cannabis that was sold when Oregon was the first state to decriminalize. And people don't know what they're buying. It's a lot more potent. It has problems if young people, one of the reasons I have been such a strong advocate for decriminalization and legalization is I want to protect young people. And right now, the hypocrisy breeds contempt for the law.
Yeah.
People, if we had a rational system that legalized, regulated, and enforced, we'd protect our children. Right now, there's no penalty for the neighborhood drug dealer selling to a kid. People don't know what they're buying. And some of them, as you know, are very potent, and some of them are unsafe. Let's have a system of regulation like we have for alcohol, not making it burdensome, but we know how to do this. And I think a Harris-Walz administration would empower reasonable regulators and officials to be able to put the pieces together properly. I think we could do this in 15 months. It doesn't have to be years long. We've been doing this. I've been dealing with this for 28 years in Congress. We know what to do. We've got models that work. We have states that have varying degrees of success. You've been in the middle of that.
Yes, I have.
We know what to do. We can put that together in a rational, thoughtful way, be able to tap the power I mean, this is a powerful economic benefit. Billions of dollars could be collected with fair, not high taxes, but fair, uniform taxes. Do more research, do enforcement, stop the cartels. In California, you're watching environmental destruction because it's the Wild West.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the thing, and part of the reason that we are still seeing a lot of that is
Yep.
because of our taxation structure and our high barrier to entry the market into the market. And it makes me, when I think about, Governor Walz and how he's able to work across the aisle, like I just had former Governor Jesse Ventura on this year.
Uh-huh.
And he was that voice and everything. He's
Yeah.
awesome to talk to. But he was mentioning how Tim called him and let him know when legalization was happening and wanted him to be there. And it's like, you have a Democrat and you have a Libertarian, and they're having good conversations and they're working together.
Yeah. Sara, you are so right. And as you know, I founded the Cannabis Caucus, but we worked to make sure that it was bipartisan. We had Republicans, we had Don Young, who was as close to a libertarian as you're going to get. There is a bipartisan group that can be quickly assembled. This is the strength of the issue. We have people coming together, and it will happen, I think, quite quickly when we get to that point. And I think a Harris-Walz administration would empower the right people, hold them accountable, and make some progress.
Oh, when you look at the future of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, because the two co-chairs, yourself and Congresswoman Lee, are not running for re-election. So when I see two of my favorite people stepping down, I wonder what the future of the caucus is and what the leadership will look like. And I know it's hard to say definitely, but what are your thoughts around that?
It will be strong and vibrant. I've been in conversations with people like AOC. I mean, there are a number of folks. It's not that controversial. The question is getting one or two people to join with us. And I've had very productive conversations. It will continue being vibrant and bipartisan. It is established now. There are people who actually want to help provide leadership. And I could not be more confident that it'll be a smooth transition. I'm going to make the most out of the next 114 days. I've written this stuff up. I have exit memos that I've written that I'm handing off to people, but we'll recruit a strong leadership core that will go forward.
And that's reassuring to hear, because that was one of the things that I was really eager to talk to you about, because quite honestly, I was worried, because you know how it is. Somebody puts in so much work and time and effort, and you want to make sure that, all the work that you do, that you've done is going to be perpetuated, because,
Yep.
It only takes one wrong move to have several steps back.
Well, I think the core of support that we've developed slowly, painfully, but we have dozens of people who are on the right side of this issue now. And we've had an overwhelming majority of people in the House who've put their names on the line for controversial votes. They're there. So I think it's going to be relatively easy to make sure that we've got a strong base of support. A number of the people in the Cannabis Caucus are continuing. We'll recruit some new members, and I don't think there'll be any problem at all keeping it vibrant and effective.
For our listeners who are looking at becoming more civically engaged or wondering what steps they can take to help positively influence policy, what would be some suggestions for you?
Well, I think every citizen ought to use the tools they have to find out where their elected officials are. Now, many of these people, as you know, we've been working hard helping educate them, get them take a public stand. It helps for people to push back and try and raise the sights. We want to accelerate the progress. There are a lot of new people who are going to join the House and the Senate. These are things that we can, in fact, do. There's also work, and you're involved with this in the state of California. There are commissions and task forces and official positions that people should get involved with to hold officials in, for example, in California, accountable. Work at the municipal level, dealing with some of the opportunities for racial justice and making greater strides for people in the industry, making the transition for people who were formerly incarcerated. There's just no end of opportunities to engage people in ongoing reform. And it's never been more timely.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to engage. And if the past, almost 10 years hasn't taught us that we can never, ever get too comfortable.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for joining me today. I know you've got a busy day, and I'm looking forward to having you back again and having some more conversations, Congressman.
Well, I look forward to it myself. I appreciate what you're doing with the program. I appreciate what you're doing in your home state of California. We're all in this together, and I think there's massive progress on the horizon.
I agree. Thank you so much.
You bet. Have a good day.
You too. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher, TuneIn. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.